Welcome, everybody, and thank you for attending our webinar. This is a big topic, and we've had about double normal registrations for this particular topic today. So we're on to something here about this, and we're talking about of course, RP22 Immersive Sound System Design document, and we've got three experts here that were involved in this. So this is great. I've known Peter Aylett of Officina Acustica for some years. And as you know, Peter, I've been bugging you because when I heard about this document years ago, I kept pinging you like, when's this coming out? This is going to come out. This is awesome. And now it's out. So it's great. So we got John Herron of Trinnov Audio and Anthony Grimani of Grimani Systems and PMI. And I've been learning from Anthony at CEDIA back in the 90s. So you've all contributed to this document. So this is a great opportunity for you as integrators and other supporting brands to hear from the experts that know this document very intimately. If you haven't downloaded the document already, you're going to get the link to the PDF to document the 144-page document, very technical, well worth reading this. And when I say in my little screen thing here that this is a game changer, that's not hyperbole. If you wrap your head around this document, it could be an absolute game changer to your company in the way you approach immersive audio to your clients. Not an exaggeration at all. It's that big. So I'm going to do a little HTA housekeeping before we jump into this topic proper. So one of them here, most of our attendees are HTA certified integrators, and you should all know this form, the Project Technology Assessment Form. Just a heads up, a couple months ago in your dealer newsletter, we said if you want one of these things customized for you with your logo, we put the link to the budget calculator here that's coded for you. You had to request them, but now we're just going to make them for you. So by the end of next month, end of May, you should see these in your inbox. So these things are super powerful to share with architects, designers, and builders, and your clients too. So wanted to give you a little heads up on that, just making it easier for you. And another thing to show you, just to let you know, we've got 4 more webinars here that are going to happen by the end of the year. The next one's also about sound, about DV LED, DV LED sound system conundrum. What about those front channels? So that comes in August. A lot of people are taking time off in the summer, so that's why we're taking June, July off. But then we've got a couple more. We got a total of 4 more webinars, all designed to make you more profitable and more efficient. So you can register for those. Again, the link to this is going to come in the chat. I also want you see right now, there's some panes here, some panels on our webinar of platinum, gold, and silver supporting brands of HTA. I want to give a special shout out to these brands. These are the companies that are invested in the HTA certified dealers, our mission of excellence, helping you rise above that competition, and has helped fund a lot of the work that HTA has done with the trade associations, kind of getting into their heads and understanding their needs and how you and them can work together better. So we thank our brands for that, because a lot of work has went into helping you get hired earlier. So want to thank them. And all of these brands are not only here, they're in your dealer newsletter. And then if you go to the resources guide section on our website, you can see all the brands and all the categories there. Okay, but now I want to get in my soapbox, because this topic is really near and dear to my heart, and probably to you as well, because most people came into becoming an integrator probably from a love of audio and video, not love of networking, not love of security cameras and access control, not other kind of stuff, but this. We all geek out on killer audio and video. So this is your friend. Now, why I think this is so great. I've been in this industry since 1995, and I'm sure you integrators have been in this situation many times. You meet a client, they share their needs, they want a great performing, let's just call it home theater. We're going to get into that whole topic later, but they want a home theater, and they're building this great home. They obviously could afford your services. You spend all this time putting the perfect thing together, and then some hack company, some unqualified company, some low baller comes in, way cheaper, way inferior solution. And now the client looks at you like you're ripping them off. Like, why is this guy half the price? Face it, 99% of clients don't know the brands that you're selling, right? So they're confused. This guy says it sounds like he's knowing what he's doing, and he says it's going to perform the same, and it's, half the price of yours. Now you're on your back foot trying to defend a legitimate design against something that's not legit. You've been there? You've probably been there before, right? So a little history and a little shout out here to our budget calculator, which some of you are using to great effect. This is one of the questions on our calculator here, which is available on htacertified.org, and many of our integrators have embedded this in their own site. It's easy to embed, and we've kind of handled that for you. Before you do your designs, this has been a tool that's been out for about 7 years to help set realistic budget estimates before you go and put all this work into design. It tells you right here, you want an ultra high performance system, you're over $376,000 and up, and there's no cap on it. That helps you. And right now, and we might change this in the future, we'll see. But if you click that, then you get into what we call surround sound system, which is the consumer facing word for what you and I call media rooms, the more dual purpose rooms. So this tool has been here for years, just exactly because of the problem I just mentioned. Before you do the design, let the client know what reality is. But RP22 is this other tool, which is extremely powerful. And we suggest you use this as well, because now you have backup, you have science, you have a document you can refer back to that will make your client's head spin if they try to read all the documentation. But it's awesome that you could point to this and set their performance criteria in your early conversation, your early consulting with them through your process of getting to know what they want. You could define those standards with them. And now the document backs you up. If you want a level this or a level of that or a level of this, we're going to get into those levels in a second. Now you have the backup. So great tool. Thank you guys for all your hard work. Peter, John, and Anthony are one of many. We couldn't have a whole mess of people on here. We couldn't get our words out, but they're represent that panel of specialists that have helped create this document. So I'm off my soapbox. I hope you're excited about this as much as possible. Peter was the working group chair, so you had to herd all these cats. Yeah. So that's hard. So I'll let you kind of start off on this, because you're probably the most intimately familiar with this, taking that huge job on. Kind of the why, anything if you want to add on to what I said, and establish what these 4 performance criteria is, because you kind of broke that into 4 different performance criteria, which I think is brilliant. Peter, take it away.
Yikes, how long have I got? The problem is once you press my go button, I'm not going to give John and Anthony a chance, but I will do my best to keep this concise.
You're all friends. You're all friends.
Little bit of perspective first. We have a standards committee imaginatively called R10. It's number 10 because it was the 10th standards group that the CTA, the Consumer Technology Association, had. This one is a collaboration between the CTA and CEDIA. And under R10, we have a number of working groups. And the great thing about this conversation is RP22 is just the start. We're currently working on what's arguably an even more impactful recommended practice called RP1, which is being chaired by Anthony. That's a recommended practice for manufacturers to say, please give us the engineering specifications to allow us to make informed specification decisions. Without that, RP22 doesn't work. We're also currently doing RP23. That's being co-chaired by Joel Silver and Jason Dustle, and that's the companion video side to RP22. So the idea is we have a suite of recommended practices covering what we do in entertainment space design. Now, I use the phrase entertainment space design very deliberately because we've got rid of room use modes. We're not saying theatre, cinema, media room, screening room, whatever. Personally, I have no idea what the difference is between a cinema and a media room. When I'm sitting down with a customer, the first thing I talk about is what is the room going to be used for? Then we talk about seating, and then everything flows from there. And these are performance definitions. Now, one radical thing we've done, and this is going to flow through all the recommended practices, is we've come up with the concept of 4 performance levels. In the previous recommended practice, we just had 1, which was reference. We now have 4. Now, I use a lot of analogies, and here's mine to describe those performance levels. You go into an art gallery, and there's a picture hanging on the wall behind a piece of picture glass. and the picture glass is really dirty. And you're staring at this picture and you're going, well, I think it's a landscape. There's some sea and some hills. That might be a castle. I don't really know what's going on. It's a bit boring. Move along now. I'm going to look at the next picture. If we then clean that glass enough that you go, oh, okay, this is an impressionist painting. It's a landscape. There's a seascape. It's set at sunset. You get an idea of the creative intent of the artist. The artist was trying to say something with that picture, and we've now cleaned the glass enough to get that creative intent. That's level one. So the baseline for this performance levels, level one is the baseline for reproducing artistic intent. We then clean the glass a bit more. We begin to see brush strokes. We begin to see texture. We begin to see detail. That's level two. We then clean the glass even more, so it's perfectly clean, a perfectly clean piece of glass. That's level three, which is reference level. We then take the glass away. So there's nothing between you and that canvas. That's level four, which is beyond reference. So what we've always tried to do in our conversations is relate everything technical performance to the creative intent of the people who made that content. And we were very, very lucky that on the working group, it was really diverse. And I've got to give a shout out because there's some other standards working group members on this call. There's Adam Keplinger. He's relatively new. He's been absolutely brilliant. There's Ben Goff from the UK. He's my vice chair of R10. There's my business partner, Maurizio Conti. So we had this amazing working group, including content creators. So we had people that work mixing and mastering Hollywood movies. We had a guy on the working group who was one of the original team who came up with Dolby Atmos at Dolby. We had a guy on the working group who worked for Xperi, who are the holding company for DTS and IMAX, and he was on the working group that came up with DTS:X Pro. So we had representation from content creators, we had representation from format providers, we had manufacturers, we had integrators, we had sales reps, we had distributors. It was a very, very broad church. But that's the long answer to your question in terms of these four different performance levels, I think are critical and are really the essence of the whole recommended practice. And I'll finish off by saying, if you design a room to level 4, this isn't a guarantee that the room is going to sound good. It isn't. If you design a room to level 4 and you put in the finest equipment available to humanity, but you give that to a complete numpty to calibrate, it's not going to be a good room. So what I think you're doing as you're going up the levels is you're providing the calibrator this canvas onto which to draw their own personal sound. If you give a great room to 10 different calibrators, you're going to end up with 10 different rooms sounding different. But what we don't want to do is give a room to a calibrator that the calibrator goes, oh, I haven't got the bandwidth, the room's noisy, the speakers are in the wrong position, the seats right up against speakers, I'm just never going to be able to do a great job. So one of the criticisms levied is that, well, you know, I like this speaker or I like that speaker. Brilliant. We're not telling you what the room is going to sound like. All we're doing is giving you guidelines so that when the room is built, that calibrator is going to go, hell yeah. This is amazing. I can really express myself with very few restrictions on what I'm able to do with this system.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I like the analogy there, and maybe some of you integrators out there could use that as well. The painting with the glass on there being dirty and letting that. I like that analogy. It's always great to put it in terms that a client can understand, and that's very relatable. And on the opening comments here, anything Anthony or John you want to add to that?
I'm curious, what's a complete umpty means for those of us who are not from the UK?
A complete numpty.
Numpty. Is that a Numpty Dumpty?
It's a term of endearment. If I say, "Oh, you numpty," it's, you know, I'll say it's not really an insult. It's a really, you know, it's a slightly English, sarcastic, soft insult.
That's great.
You'll all be calling people numpties now.
Numpties.
I promise.
I kind of chuckle because on many of these committee calls we all do weekly, there's people from all over the world, English speaking and non-English speaking. And sometimes the terms used by people, colloquial, it's like, oh, I know everybody's not going to understand what is meant there. And it's beautiful local color to ask, what is that about? I wanted to add a thing in there in talking about the levels that is brilliant, to use a British term. In the beginning, this whole thing started, I don't even remember, years and years and years ago, when a bunch of us at CEDIA said, we kind of need to build a manual that says this is kind of the guidelines for how you design a audio, video, theatrical, cinematic environment. Whether it's in a mixed-use room or dedicated room, doesn't really matter. Here's the manual. Here's what you do. And the purpose being to reveal that impressionist painting perfectly. For the lighting and the glass and everything to be exactly like the way Monet, if that's who you were talking about, saw it when it was being painted. So we had that spec, and it existed for many years, and it needed to be updated to the new world of immersive audio. There was one spec. It says, this is the ideal. And then Peter and a bunch of people said, well, it's all nice to have that spec, but really not everybody necessarily wants to go to the perfect curated example of a Monet painting. They may want to go to a decent reproduction of it, maybe whatever. And so here's the brilliance. When you're in front of a client, an end user, and go, look, if you want to see the movie and hear the movie with perfection, we can design and build for you something that meets level 4. Okay, of course I want that. Well, it costs this much money. What else you got? Well, before it was either you did it or you didn't. It was 1 or 0. It was digital. And now with these different levels, you can go, well, okay, for a little less money, we can go to a level 3 or a level 2 or a level 1, knowing that there are guidelines in each one of those cases for how to do non-random stuff. But at these different price points in my proposal, we will give you a competently designed thing that meets certain expectations, the perfection of presentation of this Monet painting. And that's brilliant. And it's brilliant because when you're talking to a customer, it's not like all or nothing. It's like, well, we have a few choices. And there's a lot of businesses where you have those kinds of choices. I always refer to automobiles as an example. You want to go buy this car? Well, you have different levels of luxury, and my kid loves Mustangs right now. And, you can get, at the high end, you get the Cobra. And at the low end, you get the basic 4-cylinder thing. In between them, you have all these different choices. You still have a Mustang, if that's what you like, but you have different price points and different levels of performance that you can describe and be consistent about. It's that consistency across our industry that was lacking. And I think with RP22, we now have a reference of consistency that 3 different integrators trying to get the good graces of what this one client can at least talk about the same thing, and the client can be in front of the same information. And I think that's so great. Otherwise, the client's really frustrated. Think about your clients that are getting these quotes, and they all say different things. They don't, like was said, they don't know one product series from another product series. They see these different prices. They have no idea what it's leading to. And now at least there's something they can refer to. As long as everybody is saying, our proposal is for a level 3, as CEDIA RP22 level 3 room. This is what we would do. Here's the products. Here's the price. Here's the terms, the conditions, whatever. At least now it's less frustrating for the customer.
Yeah, science backed, right? You could back it up with that document.
It's partially science backed, but it's also a certain level of standardization. It's putting people on the same kind of footing so that we all know, if you talk about a marathon, it's very, very clear how long a marathon is. And different cities have different marathons with different profiles, and you maybe don't run it the same way, but there's a certain standard there. So, look, when that person wins and they do it in this amount of time, it's about the same level of difficulty across the world. And that's the thing that was missing, that RP22 brings, ushers in. I love using that.
John, so let's hear from you.
Well, one point which was sort of implicit in what both Peter and Anthony said, although we are trying to create objective levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's not that we're prescribing exactly which equipment you need to do. There's still lots of room for differentiation If you're really into this brand as opposed to that brand, as long as they can deliver what's required by the standard is kind of brand agnostic. It's about the result, not about precisely how you get there. There's obviously engineering and real science involved in getting there, but there are lots of options. It's one thing that I've had to explain to a few people in talking about our RP22 is really how flexible it is. There are lots of different ways you can apply it, but at least now, as Anthony was saying, we all kind of have a common language that we can not only refer to, but be accountable for.
Excellent. Now, Peter, you alluded to this early on, and Anthony, you and I have known each other for a long time, and we've had all sorts of conversations related to this topic about performance of speakers, especially, and amplifiers came into this as well, right? Because for those that are into professional cinema design, it's way more defined than it is for your typical residential integrator putting their favorite products together, which may look pretty but not perform. And on the commercial professional side, I should say not commercial, but the professional side of audio, the speakers have very different spec sheets. You have to know what the directivity and the sound pressure levels and all sorts of radiation pattern specifications, or you don't know what's going to work in that particular environment. This is bringing that to the residential space. So I know that document, I think you alluded to that earlier, Peter, and that's standard still being set. And Anthony, you're on that. And you said one that really is what RP22 hinges on. Where are we at with development of that particular document?
We're really, really, really close. The current aim is to release the first tranche of RP1. And what I need to say about RP1 is RP1 isn't just about loudspeakers and amplifiers. Loudspeakers and amplifiers happens to be the first thing we tackled. We're then going to go into a whole range of product categories to define the specifications that us as engineers, because that, this industry needs to grow up, this industry needs to evolve, this industry needs to go beyond just being glorified retailers of very, very, very expensive boxes and giving customers bills of materials as proposals. I mean, in what other luxury part of what we buy do you get a bill of materials? Good luck getting a bill of materials for a Rolex. Good luck getting a bill of materials for a Dior dress. Good luck getting a bill of materials for a Lamborghini. Those are sold as the totality of the experience. And that's what we need to get towards as an industry. So the specification is then a specification of the outcome. What am I going to achieve in this room as a cinema builder? And to do that, we need to go through a process. We need discovery, which is deeply understanding client needs, not necessarily client wants. I never ask a client what they want, because if you ask a client what they want, you're going to get an answer. And if you get an answer, you're largely screwed. I never ask a customer how much they want to pay and what their budget is, because if they give you an answer, you're largely screwed. So discovery is about understanding client needs, understanding site constraints, understanding, what is the box of constraints I've got to work with. Design is not really a technical exercise. Design is designing the user experience. It might be producing some renders. It might be producing a seating layout. It might be just giving an idea of the level of performance. Engineering is then taking that user experience definition, and the output of engineering is a list of specifications that you require from products. Specifications, so the products come last. And the products are chosen on the basis of what we do as in engineering. And the problem at the moment is there are some manufacturers, an increasing amounts, that give us real engineering specs on their products. There are other manufacturers that, I'm going to phrase this politely, their specifications are written by the marketing department and not by the engineering department. They know what the product's going to do, but they don't necessarily tell us. And what Anthony's vision that he had, what was 7-8 years ago, Anthony?
Oh,
The whole
you're
idea for
talking to me about it
RP1 is
longer ago than that.
yeah, a decade probably, and these things take time. Is to say to the industry, we need to grow up, we need to become engineers, but to become engineers, we need specifications of products. You can't be a structural engineer without knowing the specifications of the steel you're going to build your bridge out of. And I think the irony of this, if any of you have been to ISE, which anecdotally is maybe 10 to 15% residential and 85% commercial, us in Hall 2 in residential, it's difficult to get specs out of anyone. You go out into all the other halls and talk to manufacturers of speakers from the pro audio world, they'll look at you like you're a space alien from the planet Zorg and go, well, duh, we've been doing this for 30 years. So I don't think what we're trying to do with RP1 is particularly radical in terms of the wider world, but it's certainly going to be a kick up the arse of the residential industry to start taking a much more engineering approach to things rather than just, hey, I sell this stuff, it's the best, do you want to buy it?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that it's bringing that, I call it more the science of the pro side into the residential space. It's going to be really, really important. So it's great to hear that that's going to happen pretty soon. And I believe, if I understood from earlier conversations, that in the future, and maybe you have a time frame on this, that if you want to enter your designs into like CEDIA's best of awards, I don't know if they're going to even call them best theater or media room anymore, but whatever it is, the best immersive audio system, that it's going to be, instead of in the old days, remember they used to kind of put it in price points, best between this and this price and best between this and this price. It's going to now go on these levels. Is that correct?
That's above my CEDIA non-pay grade, volunteer non-pay grade to talk about. I suspect it will be a slow process because I'm flying off somewhere tomorrow to talk to a client about a project that is a 4-year build cycle, and it would be unfair to in 3 years' time all of a sudden impose something, because the beginning of the project, probably the integrator wasn't aware, the standards didn't even exist. So I think it's going to be trickled in slowly. It won't be a hard, I don't think it will be a hard line, but that's a conversation for CEDIA, not me.
Yeah, something to think about.
The other reason it'll come in slowly is that there's a lot to learn in this document. As you alluded, Josh, to the fact that you can show this to a customer, and I immediately thought, it's not like very many customers are going to read it, but if you hand it to them, they may think, wow, this guy actually seems to understand this stuff. Okay, I'm going with him. I have mine here. Yeah.
Where's yours, Anthony?
It's in a box over there that got moved.
It was tidied up for you.
Yeah, it was tight while I was out of town.
Yeah, a running joke in RP22, and for that matter in RP1, is whenever somebody says something along the lines of, oh gosh, I'm not sure people are going to understand that. Well, Peter, that sounds like an educational opportunity for you and CEDIA. There are going to be a lot of CEDIA courses delivered to help people really wrap their brains around this, and certainly getting into huge amount of detail compared to what we can do here. Peter's already delivered some of those RP22 sessions. What's your record time for getting through everything, Peter?
It's now a 2-day course, and as I say from the beginning, 2 days isn't even the basics. I think if you were to teach RP22 from very, very first principles of physics right through to being someone who's practiced and who's visibly competent at design, I suspect that's probably 5 or 6 months full-time education to get because as an industry, there's no way we can say, hey, go on this 2-day course and you're an expert. That makes a mockery of every single profession on the planet. You can't do a 2-day course and become an expert in anything. So the 2-day I introduced, my learning objective is almost by the end of the 2 days, participants will realize, crap, I've got a lot to learn. Being Rumsfeldian, there are the known knowns, these are the things we know. There are the known unknowns, these are the things we don't know. And there are the unknown unknowns, these are the things we don't know. And what we can do in a 3-hour, 1-day, 2-day block is just expose people to all those unknown unknowns and turn the unknown unknowns into known unknowns, so that the people in that classroom can then go, okay, I'm going to start my journey to become an engineer. During these courses, I don't know if any of you remember from school, SOHCAHTOA, sine opposite over hypotenuse, cosine, tan. We do that, and people start off terrified. And then after 15 minutes, they're phoning their kids, going, "I just used the tangent button on my calculator." They're really proud of themselves. But this is what we need to do as an industry. We need to make engineering calculations. We need to take a more objective approach. And I like your little thing above your head, Josh. This is a game changer.
Yeah, thanks. And a couple of points on this too is I wrote a little thing on this on LinkedIn when it came out, because another topic I've been brought up is, and some of the integrators, you might experience this yourself. If you're out there talking to architects and designers about what you do, which, as you know me, that's what I always tell everybody to do. Sometimes, depending on who you're talking to, they diminish the importance of what you do. Like, they don't think it's that big of a deal to their process. And when I was an integrator here in Los Angeles for all these years, I got to work with some Starchitects, these big firms in LA, who on a famous one, there's a 42,000 square foot house we worked on down here in a place called Beverly Park. And an architect who we worked with, and I tried to get in there with early design with him many times, and we did his own house, just put a box in the basement of this 42,000 square foot house for a billionaire. That's going to be your theater. Next room, right? So now we get brought in, the house is just about done framing. Sight lines don't work. We weren't called. And now we're like, oh, you have to core out the concrete in this room to get the sight lines. What did that change order cost? It was 6 figures to go jackhammer out part of the foundation of this house when it could have been a phone call. So going back in time, if this went there, if we had this document then, and yeah, it'll make, well, an architect might really dig it, because there's a lot of drawings and it's really drawing intensive. And that will now show them, oh my God, this is a more involved thing than I thought. I need to get you involved early. So any tool, this being one of them, that can elevate your status to a consultant, to designer that's invited to that table early, is going to help you establish your worth and establish your credibility to be at that table early. So this document here, carry it along with you, show this is what we do. And the other thing to kind of maybe, like, if these integrators are going, what? Peter said 5 to 6 months to get this. Well, in reality, you're not going to do that. But it's good to know and read this document and know it. And this is where you might, if you're not using a special theater designer like Anthony Grimani, and there's other ones out there that, there's Keith Yates, and there's Paradise Theaters. There's a few guys out there doing this, Steve Haas. These are specialists that are going to know the more technical stuff. Work with them. That's what they know. And bring them in, just like and draw an analogy to other things going on in our industry. So we know lighting fixtures is like the cool kid on the block. So some integrators are bringing in true lighting designers, like ones that are actually lighting designers, been doing this for a long time, and bringing that specialty in-house. That's great. That's better than the companies that are going out and spending a 2-day course and now pretend they're lighting designers, like what Peter said. You can't go to a 2-day course and be a real lighting designer from the ones that have been doing this for decades. So work with a specialist, right? So put that on Anthony. That's his thing to do. And the nice thing is, like, they work with you, right? So it's not like you don't look like you don't know what you're doing. You just have to know the specialist, just like the client's architect knows how to bring the specialists in. The interior designer knows how to bring the specialists in. The cabinet makers, the floor people. The integrator know how to bring the specialists in. So this I see as a big opportunity for the theater designers to get really busy once the integrator wraps their head around this and go, oh my God, I'm not going to go to school for 6 months, but I know the pro here. I think Peter's got a thought here. You're raising your hand.
Yeah, just being polite in that sort of standards call kind of way. What I say to customers now for the really big high end stuff is when they say, so you're the expert in everything, I go, no. You think of me as being the conductor of the orchestra. I am absolutely responsible for delivering you the final results. But I will look at your project and I will figure globally what is the best team that I can bring in as a little collective for this project. We use external structural engineers. For the really serious stuff, we use other people to work out all the isolation and design the isolation envelope. We use HVAC engineers to make sure that the air conditioning is really quiet, so we can achieve a noise floor of between NCB 10 and NCB 15, which is really hard. It's really hard. We use power engineers to make sure that we've got really clean power. We use lighting designers to do some really funky stuff. So I think it's and you've nailed it, Josh. In our industry, if someone says I'm a specialist in residential technology integration, well, you're probably not. You're a really good generalist that can have a really good informed conversation with the customer about the experience. But when it comes to the hardcore engineering, I'm really good at cinema design, but I acknowledge I'm nowhere near knowing everything about everything. So we use a lot of specialists, and we will bring in different specialists for different disciplines. We're currently doing a big cinema in Southeast Asia, which is a country with, probably a bit like Florida, very high humidity. So we're not going to use an HVAC engineer that's used to dealing with UK levels of humidity for a project where there's very high levels of humidity. It's a different discipline. It's a different set of balances of compromises. So absolutely acknowledge what you're good at, acknowledge what you need help with, and get a team together. Clients love that.
Yeah, excellent. So
Well,
showing humility.
I would add to what Peter just said. The RP22 document, even if you can't absorb it, all at once because you don't have time to go to school for 5 or 6 months full time, it's at least a guideline for, okay, so I need experts in these different areas. I'm comfortable with that one, but I should check with other people on all of these around here, whatever it might be. If you don't read the book, you don't know what you don't know, in Rumsfeld's usage.
Rumsfeldian. I want to add a few things in there. First of all, the analogy that Peter brought up about the conductor, I've often heard as the director, the film director. A film director is not the actor, doesn't write the story, doesn't run the cameras, doesn't run the lighting, and is not the gaffer or the best boys. I mean, you know what a best boy does. They put that team together based on, look, this is the movie we got to do. It's got to come out on this time. And, the production company has decided this is what we're going to do. The director's job is to coalesce all of these people and do a good job of it. And that's what in my view, that's what the integrator needs to do. Now, if along the way the integrator happens to know how to run a camera, they can get behind the lens of the camera and go, yeah, I like that shot, but they better have a good director of photography to do the work all of the time. So I think that's a kind of a slight change in the mindset. As the work I do today, actually this year's 25 years that I started a consulting company that helps design media environments. It's not just theaters. Sometimes it's a church, sometimes it's a gym, sometimes it's a whatever. So it's called Performance Media Industries because it's about environments where media is presented. And I run into a lot of people when I go talk to them. It's like, no, we got that. We know how to do all of that. Man, I don't. Great. Just like Peter said, it's like, okay, you think you know, you don't even start to know what you don't know yet. And so you're doing, sort of a B grade or C grade movie because you haven't hired the best talent, essentially. I also want to bring up something that's interesting is I hadn't thought of this, but the community we're selling to, which is the architects, builders, designers, and users, think of us as basically at the same level as a plumber or an electrician that's like, yeah, you come in whenever you need to come in and you do your thing. And they don't understand that to do the thing right, there's a lot of planning, a lot of engineering, a lot of organization that needs to get paid for. It needs to happen. So instead, Josh, as you've noticed as an integrator, you get called at the last time because you're just a stereo guy, right? You're just going to bring a speaker and hook it up, and you're like, ah. So I had this little flash of a scenario where you show up at the meeting with the RP22 book, which, by the way, there's only a limited number of them you can get, but you can print that out, and you have that book and you go, great, so we're here to talk about a media environment. So before I say any more, I want to point out that this is our industry guidebook on how to do this. You pause, you look, and you go, there's, what is it, 174 pages, is that right, Peter?
144.
147. There's 147 pages of stuff I need to know and work with to deliver a proper thing to you. So I just want to set some guidelines and rules over here. For me to do a good job, we need to meet all of this, which means I'm not going to show up at the last minute and put up a TV and hook up some speakers. There's a lot of prep work to do for this phone book sized document to be implemented and serve you. Then you stop there and you let them cogitate on that, which is, don't call me when all the walls are closed up and you think I'm just the sound guy. So this is not an integrator issue. This is an industry issue. On the commercial side, when people are putting up big commercial buildings in which there's audio and video, it is known that you have to have a consultant. A consultant is hired that's not the integrator. It's actually a consulting engineer. There's a ton of firms around the world, really, really good ones, that have data sheets for every product that tells them everything they need to know. And they have a client spec for what the client needs to achieve. And they're working from true engineering data to produce a spec for, okay, this building needs all these things. Then that spec is put out to bid. And the integrator is not just coming up with a design. They're working to this document. And so when the builder or the architect, the owner, whoever is the purse string holder is looking at these bids, it all represents as a contractor that I will fulfill the contract of implementing this thing that's in this document. Okay? Now, everybody's on the same footing, right? Now, integrator A, professional audio, video, commercial integrator, may choose products XYZ. The other one may choose products ABC. It doesn't really matter. They need to meet the spec. And if they fail to meet the spec, they haven't fulfilled the contract. It's a contractor. And if they haven't fulfilled the contract, they're liable for all of the things that happen when you don't fulfill the terms of the contract. In our space, in the residential space, everything I just described is, I forget what Peter called it, is basically science fiction, right? You're like, if you talk about what I just said to a residential team of builders architects, you sound like you're speaking Martian, right? Well, we also need to change that around. Now, we can't change their business, but we can influence. We can show up, we go, you probably didn't realize there's a lot of work needed to engineer, spec, define, and build this thing. And here's the guidebook. This is you talking as an integrator. I didn't come up with this. This isn't just me BSing you. This is our industry guidebook. Okay? So I'm here on this first meeting. I'm going to figure out what the specs, what the client needs are. I'm going to come up with the design and engineering, which, by the way, I hope you pay for. I'm a real fan of asking for money to do the design. Otherwise, you're working for free. I'm going to come up with that, but no, it needs this book, and I'm going to need to be at all of the right phases of this construction project involved so that we don't have to do a 6-figure redo of a sightline thing on this project in Beverly Park. So that's a lot of words. Let me go back. These things are complicated. They need to be engineered. We know it. Us on this call know it. I hope most of the integrators know it. Most of the integrators know, well, I can't really convince anybody of this because they don't want to hear that. Well, now you have an actual document, a book that you can bring and go, don't believe me. This is what our top brains of this industry said. And by the way, in here, in our conversation, depending on the client needs, we could do this as a Formula 1 solution or a Formula 2 or a Formula 3, if you understand cars. We can do it just as, amateur car auto racing, if the client understands the automobile analogies. I'm here to determine where you are. Are you trying to build a car for Formula 1? or for Formula 3 or just amateur, Saturday night racing. That's what we're going to do. Once we figure that out, I'll come back with some proposals for that.
Yeah, this
So,
is John, were you saying something? I cut you off?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
So the other thing I wanted to just quickly address is I run a company that does engineered design of these rooms, and there's, like you mentioned, there's a number of other good ones. It is really important, if a project really needs to come out, it's really important to consider putting up budget to hire one of those companies. Hire us, hire Paradise Theaters, hire Keith Yates, hire one of the other good ones out there. Because now you actually are bringing in a really good, a good writer. In the analogy of a movie, I don't care how good your actors and your director of photography are. If the writer is not good, it's going to be a dud, right? So you got to bring in that person who's going to look at this from a scientific point of view, which person has probably been on the RP22 committee writing the friggin' document, and they're going to do a good job of that. And the budget for that is somewhere, I don't know, depending on the different firms. It's between $3,000 and $100,000, depending on the size of the project. But that's well worth spending the money. And the way I always look at it is you pay one way or the other. So if you decide, no, I'll figure it out myself. I'm good. I've sat through the class. I've watched Peter Aylett's webinars. I've been to his class. And if you do it and you fail where something doesn't work right, you're going to be paying the money to fix it. So I look at hiring a design firm as an insurance policy where you're like, okay, I'm going to get these guys who do a good job. They're going to produce all the documents. It's going to be really nice. Everybody involved, from the foundation, the people pouring the foundation, all the way through the person hanging the curtains, are going to have a cohesive document to work from, which then becomes the source of contract. And it keeps the whole project going better. So it's a bit of investment up front to save money down the line. And if the document is nicely done, when you propose that document for the CEDIA awards, Josh, that you were talking about, that's going to be major points for winning the award, because I know the judges look at the pictures, they look at the specs, and they look at the documentation. And there's a lot of points for documentation in the awards program. So that's zip.
That this fits in really nicely for, what I love that this is another tool, I kind of already mentioned it, but to take it a little further, that to establish yourself as a professional that is thought of as an early design team partner for architects, designers, and even general contractors, ideally to be caught before that at the architectural stage. This is the type of document that will help you. Before this document was released, for those other HTA dealers on there, we'll know that we kicked off something last January 2023, called HTA Design Partner. So if you don't know what that is, or you kind of remembered what that is, we have a webinar on this. And this is the thing that we established, which talks about this. It's an add-on enhancement, I guess you could say. It doesn't cost anything extra to be an HTA certified dealer. And we built this with the input of architects, designers, and builders. Because what I do, I teach them and say, now that I tell you all the things an integrator could bring to your project, what are the things, why wouldn't you bring them to your project early? And then we listen to their complaints, like where things went sideways with integrators. We built that into this code of conduct, and then baked into that code of conduct, these are the drawing sets that integrators, the good ones, could provide you. And they're not used to seeing that. This is those type of drawings. Bring some in, get some sample drawing sets. If you don't produce these in-house, get a sample set from Anthony or another theater designer you work with. Let them help you look like a rock star. Show those to the architect, and they're like, I had no idea. Oh, this is what the good integrators do. And we're backing you up here to say that, yeah, you charge for this. This is not free. And like Peter said, and like Anthony said, using the music thing, or the orchestra conductor or the director of a movie, it's going to take some humility to approach them that way, that you don't have all the answers. And I see some integrators out there. So my little complaint in the soapbox, sometimes there's a bit of ego, and they act like they know it all. No, you don't. But you don't have to know it all. And you look better when you can admit that, and that you're bringing the best in class people in there. It makes you look better. And so don't feel, that's what I'm looking for, self-conscious about that. It's probably not the right word. But this is a way to approach architects, designers, and leveraging those type of things that we baked into that HT design partner kind of dovetails into what Peter and we're all talking about here. All three of us, or four of us here, including me, are talking about will help you be seen as somebody that is brought to that table early. When the structural engineer and when the MEP is there and the civil engineers, you need to be to that party early. This gives you that excuse to do that. So great on that. Now, Anthony, do you have any, I know this is a question that has come up because I've seen it when I was an integrator myself, when guys like you and others would come to us and say, hey, bring us into your theaters. They go, well, I want you to dispel this, or maybe you could give us a short thing because we don't have any minutes on this, but help the other integrators out there to understand that if they bring you to the thing and you have obviously your set of fees, some integrators are worried like, oh, well, if my budget is, I'm just going to pull a number out of the air, $500,000, then which, Anthony's going to eat into that because now I'm going to sell less stuff because his fees are going to eat into that $500,000. That's not really sane thinking, correct?
That's insane thinking.
Yes.
A bunch of answers to that. One, it's been established forever and a day. I'm going to say probably 2,000 years that architecture and design should cost 10 to 15% of the total budget of a project. I didn't come up with that. I'll tell you a story. Years and years ago, I wanted to do some remodeling on a home I just bought. The architect came up and said, well, what are you thinking you're going to spend on this? Our fees are going to be 10% of that. I'm like, how did you come up with that? How do you know? And so that was about 35 years ago. Now I learned because that's a pretty good rule of thumb that's worked well for at least one, if not two millennia. So if you have a $500,000 budget to do an AV environment, number one, to not go against the grain of what's been figured out for years, you should plan on $50,000 for design and engineering. Okay, architecture, design and engineering. Now I'm not going to take all of that. Some of that is going to go to the interior designer. Some of that's but you got to right away. You have to make the client aware that out of that budget, this just cannot be gear that shows in the door. It needs to be thought through, design, engineered, project managed. Number one. Number two. So the acoustics, optics, audio, and video design firm, which is kind of how in many words, I look at us and the other firms that do that same stuff, are going to save you from mistakes. So yes, there's going to be, I've mentioned this already, there's going to be an upfront fee. Well, it's not all paid upfront, but there's a chunk of money you're going to plan on spending so that later you don't end up wasting money somewhere else by either somebody in the construction team going, I didn't know I was supposed to do this. Where was that documented? Well, we have this little letter over here we sent. There's a text message that was sent on WhatsApp where that's explained. It's like, what? So I do run into that a lot. You're eating into my budget. And my answer is, think of this as buying an insurance policy for success, if that's how you want to do it. So, you have a home, you have a mortgage, and you have to pay insurance. And if you don't pay insurance, you're taking a chance that if there's a fire, you've lost all your money. And it's kind of the same. Now, further than that, I like to think that the design firms that do this, whether again, it's my firm or the other ones who are all good at this, actually are going to help you do something better than you would have on your own. That's where you have to kind of put your ego aside. And what I like to joke is, don't ask me to lace a rack. I know how to do it. It's going to look like doo-doo, okay? Because your techs do it all the time, and they do a beautiful job. Those CEDIA awards for best dressed rack where you look at the thing and it looks like jewelry, and I'm like, man, it would take me a year to do that because that's just not what I do. But the firms that do design and engineering work, that's all we do. And so we're quick at it, and we do a really good job. So not only are you going to have an insurance policy, but chances are the results will be better. I'm going to say that in all humility. Hopefully it will be better so that when the calibrator shows up that Peter was talking about, they're just going to turn the dials, it's all going to work, and it's going to be fantastic, both picture and sound.
And the budgets could actually go up, what I've seen too, because sometimes the client is, if you're the salesperson, well, the client's like, well, you're just trying to sell me some more stuff. But
Mm.
the engineer comes back and says, well, the science backs this up. You're going to need to add a couple more channels here to get the immersive audio to work back in this here, or we need a more powerful projector to get the horsepower to get the right lighting on this. Whatever it is, you've got the science to back it up.
Yeah.
And you're the technical advisor, not the salesperson.
It's
okay, because it's like that's not how you get paid, right? If you're
it's what's known in sales as the disinterested third party that's consulting to do something. So I'm going to reword what you say. You show up and you're thinking, I got to get $100,000 more out of this client, otherwise this is not going to work. I know. And instead you put me or Keith Yates. Keith is amazing at this. He's really good at that. You put us in front of the client and go, so, Josh over here has done this thing, but I really think you're not going to be happy with the outcome of this because you need this other stuff. You need this other stuff. Well, what's that going to cost? I don't know, talk to him, but I really think as an engineer who's done this hundreds of times before, that until you do this, you're not going to impress your friends. It's just not going to be awesome.
There you go.
Okay, then he turns around to Josh. I'm imagining Josh is still in integration, or the other Josh we know in integration. By the way, there's a lot of Joshes in the integration business. I don't really know how that happens. Turns to Josh and goes, well, what do you think? It's like, I think that's a good idea. Well, how much is that going to cost? And I recommend at that point, go 100,000, I think. Okay, let's do it.
There you go.
You have no idea how often I've been in that conversation. And it's not a manipulation, it's the truth, but it's just helping the client not feel like somebody's trying to grab my money. This is not a money grab. They're actually trying to make me happier. But I can do that because whether you say yes or no, client, I'm not getting any more or less money. It doesn't change what I'm doing. So I'm a disinterested third party that ends up having the trust that what I'm saying leads to something good for everybody.
Yeah.
I really like doing design sitting next to the client. I will have a laminated piece of A3 and I've got little furniture icons, and with the client I will design their room. They are involved in that process to sort of figure out what it is, and we then talk about performance levels, and at some point I'll use what's called a pre-close. You've all probably done it. And that's to say, okay, based on the conversations we've been having, I think this is going to cost around $700,000. And then you say nothing. You say nothing. And the problem with budgets is the reason budgets exist is people ask customers what their budget is. If we have the conversation based on expected level of performance, expected level of functionality, then you tell the customer what it's going to cost. It's going to cost around this. I'm not giving them an engineered proposal, but we, experienced people, we know approximately how much it's going to cost. We tell the customer, and if they go, oh, no, that's way too much, then you can value engineer that down. But if a customer comes to you with a budget, where has that customer got that budget from? They have absolutely no idea how much these things cost. And if you go through discovery and you go through design, and there was an anonymous question posted, please can we have a course on discovery? Well, myself and the absolutely fabulous Rich Green are going to be teaching a course on discovery at CEDIA Expo this year. So that's a nice easy answer. But let's get back to RP22. RP22 is an amazing template, and that will have the companion RP23, which is the video companion to it, at some point. Don't ask me when. I've given up telling people when, as Josh will tell you. But when you have those documents, you can have a performance level expectations conversations with your customer. And some bits of performance levels are bring money. If you want to make the room quiet, bring money. If you want to go louder and retain fidelity, bring money. You want higher channel count, bring money. These are bring money things. Other things, it's just physics. Sorry, the room's not big enough. So I guess the bring money conversation is you're gonna need a bigger boat. You're gonna need a bigger room to get your performance level of expectation with the amount of seats that you've said you're like. So if you drive the conversation according to performance level expectations rather than according to money, and then you are telling the customer how much it's going to cost. And if you're doing this with them, if often it's not that they can't afford it, they just need to justify that number in their head. It's, cost is less important, value is critical. And that's why I always start the conversation with, what are you going to use the room for? And customers are often taken aback. They go, well, it's a theatre, it's a cinema, I'm going to watch movies. Well, have you considered this is going to be the quietest room in the house? It's just going to feel like a great place to sit in. You're probably going to want in there to go in there, read a book and fall asleep with the book on your lap, drinking a glass of bourbon. It's going to be your favorite room. Oh, you told me your wife's a big fan of yoga. Well, again, it's really quiet. It's a really serene space. That space between the front seats and the screen, that could be an amazing yoga studio. And the more you talk about use modes and get those conversations just ticking in the customer's head, they can go, so this isn't just a room I'm only going to use once a month for special occasions. This is a room I'm going to use every day. All right, let's spend some money on this, because this then becomes good value. So start the conversation with room use modes, then go on to look at seating, and everything will appear. And if you get the customer involved in that, and it becomes a value conversation rather than a cost conversation, then you're in charge of the budget and not the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. The whole leading with performance, key thing to do. You could defend it. Your budgets could be defended. We've gone a couple minutes over time, so thank you for staying on here. And if you guys are willing to stay on for a few and more questions come on, maybe you guys could stay on here and we'll see if that. I wanted to answer a question live that kind of came in here. Can you please share the contact information again? That should be in chat. I still see it here. It should be there. Yeah, meet everyone. If you look in the webinar chat, or if you can't see it for some reason, email me. My email is jc@htacertified.org. Be sure to get you the contact information you need. And let's see, are there any plans?
Seth Johnson is lobbying for an audiobook version of RP22 read by Peter.
And can I quickly answer a question? It's not cardboard cutouts. Here's a pack of them, and I use this when I'm teaching. They're little laminated, different types of seating. I've got different kind of seating stuff, some big stuff, some individual recliners. These are all drawn at 1:20 scale. So if you just draw the outline of the room at 1:20 with the customer, you can then look at different screens, you can look at viewing angles, you can look at seating arrangements, you can look at seat to seat consistency. The customer thinks they're in control of the conversation, but actually you're curating the whole thing. You're never allowing them to make a wrong choice. You're always making sure that they're making an informed decision.
You're coaching them through.
Yeah, and the how much it's going to cost doesn't come at the beginning. How much it's going to cost then becomes an outcome, and because the customer's in control, they don't feel they're being ripped off. And then once you've drawn their room and they said, okay, based on level 4, this is going to cost $1 million. They go, whoa! You can then go, well, we can do level 2, which is still amazing. It's still absolutely amazing. That's probably going to be $400,000 or $500,000. Okay, cool. But they've led the conversation. They've been involved in the process. And if you have access to a customer, and if a customer's engaged, that's amazing. It's also fun. It's really, really fun to do with a customer.
Can I bring something up in terms of pricing, if we can go just one more minute? Every other trade during the construction or remodel phase is talking about price per square foot or price per square meter. I encourage you to talk about what you're going to do in price per square foot or price per square meter. So rather than say this is going to cost $700,000, say, oh, this is going to cost about $1,200 per square foot, or whatever's the number you want to use. And then they're either quickly doing the math, or you're helping them by saying, just like the kitchen and just like the dining room, it's in the same price point per square foot or per square meter as all of the other facilities in this house. Are you cool with that? Then there is not the sense that you want $700,000 for a big TV and a bunch of loudspeakers, which is not what you're doing, right? It's just bringing it back to the conversation everybody else is having during this phase. And by the way, A3, for those of you who are not from outside the US, is a size of sheet of paper, which is how many centimeters? Yeah, Peter, not everybody knows that. How many centimeters by how many centimeters?
It's an ISO international standards organization size for a piece of paper.
Understood. It's
we're stuck here.
It's a
We're
big
stuck
piece
here.
of paper that
Quickly
they use
changing
often
the
in
subject.
architecture.
Also, what Peter described in terms of, here's the size of the room, here are the screens, what do you want to do for seating? Once you get to the point where you have an idea of how big and where the screen is and how many rows of seating there are and how many people are going to be in those rows, the next logical, you need that information before you can make intelligent decisions about where to put the speakers. Never mind which speakers you wind up choosing. That might be more of a level 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of, but the number of speakers is driven largely by how many people are going to be in the room on a regular basis. And again, that's very easy, sort of step by step for the customer or the client to understand, but they can see that there's more to this than, as Tony said, hanging a TV and slapping some speakers in the room.
One thing we didn't get into today, but to whet your appetite for those that haven't downloaded and looked into this book yet, one thing that I think is really to go off what John's saying is brilliant about this book is you got. Before I do that, I'm gonna launch a quick poll here. I just wanted to get some input on find out from the integrators on the call if they're using the HTA technology budget calculator to have budget conversations with clients. While that's being answered, I want to bring up this point, which I think is such a help for you out there. You've got Oro 3D, you've got Atmos, you've got DTS Pro, and I'm missing more. There's all these different pro formats, and they all didn't get in the same room and talk this out together. They all have their own ways of doing their immersive audio. This document tackles all of that. This is how Atmos sees the world. This is how Oro sees the world. This is how DTS sees the world. And sometimes there's a correlation, sometimes there's not. But here's what you guys have done to help. Here's where you could kind of average all of that out. And this seems to work in the real world. What a great document for that. Because I always wondered that too. I've like, that's so confusing. So there's lots of drawings on there. I was going to scroll through there, but there's so many drawings on there. You just really have to download this and read it, absorb it, but you will definitely learn a lot from it. And using processors like the Trinnov, you got so much horsepower in that you could make all this stuff work quite magically across all those different formats as well. So
pursuant to that, Josh, at least for the people who have not yet had time to absorb RP22, we do design reviews for our dealers all the time, where the main thing we're reviewing is, do you have an appropriate number of speakers and are they in the right location, given the scope of the theater design? And, we spent a lot of time back in 2017, mostly Arnaud Laborie, who's our CEO. And I was doing editing and some connective tissue in the writing, but largely it was Arnaud. We started off doing a white paper for our dealers to give them, to share with them some of what we had learned through doing hundreds of really high channel count theaters, because, we've been doing it longer than anyone else. But it turned into, what I thought was going to be a 10 or 12 page white paper turned into this significant book. It was 80 some odd pages. When we got to that section of RP22, Arnaud and I decided to just send the PDF to all the members. And it was largely adopted by acclamation, simply because this is a group of people who can spend an entire hour working on the phraseology of a paragraph. So the idea that there might be an entire chapter of the book that was largely, obviously we had to get rid of any Trinnov specific stuff, but the underlying structure of that chapter, we'd already spent 14 months working on it and thinking it through. So it was a time saver. But since not everybody's been through that whole Vulcan mind meld thing, if you've got integrators who are kind of wondering, give me a call. I assume my email address is somewhere in the contact info. If not, it's on our website.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks. The a question came in, and I don't know if anybody's going to know that on this because it used to be called the theater TCD. What was it? Theater designer.
Cinema designer.
Yeah. Does that help score rooms and/or seats based on RP22 performance levels? I don't know.
It would. I mean, the answer it will do. Guys working really hard to integrate RP22 and then RP23 into it. So I suspect it either does now or it will do. I'm not sure it's going to score, but I think you'll be able to say I want it to be this performance level, and then it will then tell you what the implications of that are. One thing I'll say on that is, and I'll say it twice because it infuriates me. Software is not a replacement for competence. I'll say it again. Software is not a replacement for competence. Software is there to make quick iterations, to save you time. But you should be able to do on a piece of paper with a calculator and a pen all the calculations that all the bits of software you use do, but the software is there just to make it quicker. And when you're in a design session with a client or an engineering session to justify your engineering, you look like an absolute hero if rather than going to some software to calculate things, you get your calculator out, you get your pen, you draw it, and you do the calculation manually. How many of your competitors are going to be able to do that? I suspect not many. So understand and be able to do the engineering manually with a calculator, a scale rule, a pen, and a piece of paper, but then absolutely use, brilliant bits of software like TCD just to make your life quicker, but in the knowledge that you can justify and manually do every single calculation that it can.
That's the other thing about TCD is that it's a great sales tool. I realize that's not really what it was designed to do, but you can, once you kind of know your way around the software a little bit, which doesn't take very long, you can spend 10 minutes inputting relevant data about the size of the room and the number of seats and things like that, and then push a button, go off and do something else for a little while, come back, and when you get back, you get a 30 to 40 page proposal that you could hand over to a client that just says, well, as a first iteration, we're looking at something like this, which gives you all of these benefits, and you can explain it to them. But it's a 30 or 40 page document that would otherwise take you probably 2 or 3 man weeks to produce. And you've invested about 10 minutes and then a cup of coffee in producing it. And if that doesn't allow you to put more proposals in front of more people and play the numbers game, then we need to have a talk because you need to know what your business is. You're not going to close every sale, so put out more proposals.
My other caution with using software for proposals is if everyone uses the same software and you have 5 different dealers all presenting a proposal to a customer, all which have been generated with the same software, the client's going to look at that and go, hang on, they're all using the same software for this. How am I going to tell which is the competent company? Now that software is genius. It's brilliant. I'm not criticizing it, but I would caution you taking the direct output of that software and showing that to a client. I would take the output of that software and then skin it with your own branding so it looks like something that uniquely differentiates you rather than just the same thing all your competitors are going to produce.
That's a good point. It's a really good point. Wow, this has been great. We went 15 minutes over and most people stayed on. So we're on a resonating topic here, right? So there's so much, like I said, we could spend insane amount of time getting through the details. You've got professionals here that, thank you so much, guys, for being on this panel that are intimately familiar with this. Download this document, read it. I've gone through most of it and reread many paragraphs to try to wrap my head around this because I'm an enthusiast myself on all this. I think it's so great. It is a game changer, and hopefully this is even helping you get or think about how you approach the market, how you approach clients, and how you approach architects and designers. I really want that to settle in with you as well, because this really professionalizes what you do. And if you listen to this webinar, even go back, listen to the one about the HTA design partner, these things help you get hired early to the project. When you're hired early to the project, look out. Holy moly,
Good things
right?
happen.
Good things happen. And so many great rooms get built with compromises. How about building without the compromises, because you were part of that early design team? You're out there at the architect schematic design, sharing what the dimensions of the room should be, and things are the way that they should be, instead of like, well, we could make this work, but it would have been probably 20% better if we could have done it this way, or we could have put more seats the way we wanted to, or the seats could have been better. All these little compromises that you have to work around when you get brought to the project early. This will help you do that. So kudos to this for you guys for helping be part of this webinar, but help creating this document. Lots of love went into it and a lot of hard work and volunteering. And we hope that everyone that listened to this today uses this to launch we're not going to call it home theater media room, their immersive audio systems into a whole new thing. So thank you, everyone that attended. We are recording this, so we'll have this on the YouTube channel that we have. And thanks again, guys. So we'll leave it at here.
Thank you, Josh.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Josh.
Great
It's been great.
questions. Absolutely great questions. I have one last thought, if I may.
Yeah,
I know
no. I don't have to end this.
So there's 147 pages, 147 pages for this document. We all worked really hard, and like was said, we would spend an entire arguing about 4 words in a paragraph to make sure it's right. You do not need to know how to engineer every single thing in there. You just need to be familiar with the fact that there's a bunch of stuff in there. So I would say the number one where this is useful is as a scan. Like, okay, so there's stuff. Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought of this. I wasn't aware that I need to worry about. So number one. Number two, I think it's a great document, like I said before, to show to your partners to go, I'm not just trading and buying and selling gear. I'm a consultant. This is one of the documents we use for our consultancy work. And there's a nice way to go, and you got to respect that. This is part of what we're doing that's a little different than just people who sell gear on the internet.
Yeah, pay yourself what you're worth, right? And establish yourself as that design consultant. And for those that might know a little bit about what I did before HTA, I was a consultant for 18 months with a company called Axiom Design. It was an eye-opening thing. Maybe this is not eye-opening to Anthony because you are a consultant and a designer, but when I was no longer an integrator and I went back to the same architects and builders and designers as a low voltage design consultant, I had respect that I didn't formerly have. And I'm like, I'm the same guy. Like, this is not right. I was a great integrator. Why am I getting invited to this party early? And that was an eye-opening thing that was brought up earlier in this webinar. Is integrators are mistakenly thought of as only contractors. You come down late stage in the game, you put your stuff in and go, right? That was what was said, and that's true. But this trade is so different. It's so heavy on the design and consultation side. And unless you spell that out very specifically to the architect, designer, and builder, they miss that. And even though they see problems on their jobs due to lack of planning, they seem to not get that until you spell it out. So spell it out. And I can tell you from now in my role at HTA, when I'm talking to architects, designers, and builders, and basically trying to sell them on what integrators do, there's no pushback. Once I explain, here's what's in it for you, they don't come back and say you're crazy. They go, it's a good point. Yeah, but I haven't seen integrators that work to that level yet. Oh, I could show you some, the HTA hat comes on here. But guys, it's not a hard story to tell, and it's really transformative to your business. And Peter, I've listened to many of your podcasts, you and Rich Green, about design selling and all that. Listen to those. If you could kind of wrap Peter's thoughts in there, Rich Green's talk about design selling. Is that what it's called? Design selling?
Design thinking.
Design thinking. There you go. That's what we're talking about here. It's a different approach, and you get respected and brought to the project early. Totally change your business. So yeah, that's my soapbox on that because it works. So yeah, thanks everybody. All right.
And for our next call, we're going to explain where soapbox comes from, right, Peter?
Yeah, it's an English
Well,
thing, isn't it?
We'll do our best.
The
Yeah.
next one. Yeah.
A
Yeah,
friend of
yeah.
a good childhood friend of mine, his father wrote the English American dictionary.
I love it.
Oh, Peter, I
Excellent.
forgot to tell you this. The budget calculator has been calibrated to work in the UK about 2 weeks ago. So
Nice.
when you get to it, I don't know if you, matter of fact, if you could tell me, it's supposed to do this. It's supposed to pick up on your IP address and actually flip it to UK automatically. If it doesn't, you could just select it and everything goes to pounds, and it does the pound conversion and even tells you the conversion rate that day. So if you send the budget to yourself, it'll say calculated US dollars to pounds at this conversion rate.
Nice.
And I know some, yeah, because we're getting ready to open to the UK. So we're getting our homework done ahead of time on that.
Exciting.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks. Let me know if it flips the tag on there, because hopefully you just go to the website, click on the budget calculator, and it automatically selects UK. It's supposed to.
Can I have a final? Sorry, Anthony, I'm going to trump your final say with just a final 10 seconds, and that is, it's amazing when you're in a meeting with a client and they say, "So why should you do this system? You know, what makes you so good?" And you get the recommended practice out and you stick it on the table and you say, "Because I wrote the book on it." Literally, get involved in CEDIA standards. If you're a CEDIA member or a CTA member, please get involved. Email me. I can put you in contact with the right staff members at CEDIA. Come and have a look at what we're all about. I think we have some fun. I mean, the three of us are a good indication of the kind of people that are on the calls. And you get to hang out with amazing people like John and Anthony and just develop this incredible network that no matter what you want to ask, CEDIA Standards becomes a real community. So please, please think about getting involved.
Sounds good. I'm teaching this year at Expo. I'm involved again. I did that for about 5 years, and now I'm back teaching about helping turn trade partners into referring partners and getting hired early. I'm going to go a whole hour on that. So yeah, that's good. Have a great day, everybody, and see you on the next webinar. And any questions that I could help you out with, please email me. I'm jc@htacertified.org. Have a great day,
Excellent.
everybody.
Thanks
Thanks,
for having
Josh.
us, Josh.
Cheers.